Book your wedding day with us. Salon DNA, 415-956-1909.
Hello and welcome to California Up Now. I'm Claudia Iseman, and our show is dedicated to the issues and events that make our Golden State great. Our topic this morning is Proposition 64, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. Our guest today is Tenoch Flores with the Yes on 64 campaign. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here today.
Great. All right, let's start right off with the nuts and bolts of Proposition 64. Tell me about it.
Well, Prop 64 creates a safe and legal system for adult use of marijuana in California. And it does that by building on the landmark bipartisan legislation on medical marijuana that was signed into law by Governor Brown earlier this year. And it takes that and it creates a system for regulating, taxing, and controlling adult use of marijuana in California. It does that while protecting children, safeguarding local control over the issue.
And what do you think the chances of passing Proposition 64 are at this point? What do your public polls show?
Yes, well, a lot of the public polls show that this is an issue that in California, an increasing majority of Californians agree with. I think most of the polls that have come out show it at around 60% or so. So we're feeling good about that. But, you know, we've always said that passing this is going to take a grassroots effort. That's why we encourage anybody who wants to see this pass, who wants to see our broken marijuana system changed, to go to www.yeson64.org. They could sign up to get more information, see who has endorsed this measure already, and you'll note that there's a wide range of bipartisan support from the measure, from the ACLU to Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, law enforcement organizations as well. So you could go on there and check to see the endorsers for the measure.
Why do we need to legalize marijuana?
Well, that's a great question. You know, people have been asking, why now? Why do we need to do this? And really, it's a matter of, our current marijuana system is broken. I think.
Yeah, and you said that before. Why is it broken?
Well, I think
because they say the medical marijuana is being abused. People are coming up with illnesses so that they can smoke pot.
Well, beyond medical marijuana, I think it's pretty clear that marijuana is widely accessible as it is right now. And so that's it's not being regulated. It's in the shadows, and this measure seeks to change that by introducing regulation and taxing marijuana for adult use. It could generate up to $1 billion in revenue. That's the estimate from the Legislative Analyst Office.
$1 billion?
Yes, $1 billion within a few years of the measure passing, with some of that money going toward law enforcement as well as public health programs, including those that administer treatment and drug abuse prevention for teenagers and others.
Okay, what do you think the chances are of it passing?
Well,
you've been out in the public,
yes.
And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, a majority of Californians are in support of the measure. I think the more they hear about it, the more they figure out just how much thought has been put into this. Applied lessons from the examples from other states that have done it, the fact that this is going to be built upon the law that was just signed by Governor Brown with regards to medical marijuana. I think people, the more they hear about it, the more they're in favor of it. So I think we feel pretty good about the campaign that we're running. We feel that we're in the process of getting the message out and that people are responding to it, because the majority of Californians know that the current system as it stands just isn't working. And it's not working in particular for blacks and Latinos, who are much more likely to be arrested for a marijuana offense than whites.
Yeah, talk about that. What is the problem with that?
Well, I mean, let me just back up by giving you a bit of context. So in the past 10 years in California, there have been more than 400,000 arrests for misdemeanor and felony drug arrests for marijuana.
So in other words, law enforcement comes up to a person who they believe has been smoking marijuana and says, "Where's your medical card?" They don't have it, and so they get arrested.
For a variety of reasons. That could very well be one of them, but the bottom line is that people are still being arrested by this, and people's futures are being impacted by
Definitely.
minor arrests for marijuana. That needs to change. I think there's agreement that that's not right. From our point of view, those are law enforcement resources that are being wasted. Passing this measure could actually save, we talked about the new revenue generated for the state, but it could actually also save the state up to $100 million a year in reduced legal and court costs as a result of these minor offenses no longer being prosecuted, no longer being moved through the courts.
Okay.
So in addition to generating revenue, it could also save Californians a lot of money.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break right now, and then we're going to come right back, so don't go away.
Book your wedding day with us. Salon DNA, 415-956-1909.
Welcome back to California Up Now. Tenoch Flores is our guest this morning, and he is talking about the legalization of marijuana, also known as Proposition 64, the Adult Marijuana Act. And we were talking about THC during the break, and that seems to be sort of a problem with the opposition, is that, well, there are two things. The first is driving under the influence. How are you going to regulate that?
Well, with regards to driving under the influence, that's really something that law enforcement is in charge of, and that's why the measure devotes revenue for training and for law enforcement training and application of the new law. So that's really something that law enforcement is going to be working on. They're the ones who are qualified to do that, and we feel confident that they could come up with the right way to deal with that.
So in other words, they suspect someone has been driving under the influence of marijuana, and will they take a breathalyzer test? And then if they'll determine, sort of like alcohol, if you're above or below the limit?
Well, that's being determined still. For example, in Colorado, I know that there are a couple of pilot programs that law enforcement has in that state where they are using technology similar to what you've described to determine the level of intake. And that's still being worked out. Like I said, those are pilot programs, so that's why the measure dedicates part of the revenue to law enforcement in California so that they could help work out a system that'll serve us best and keep us safe.
Okay, another issue is advertising on television and how this affects children. That's something that the opposition is pretty upset about. Do we need to advertise the marijuana, or how do you feel about that?
Well, look, this measure actually includes the strongest protections of any other measure dealing with marijuana in the country. We've learned from the lessons from the other states that have passed recreational marijuana use for adults, including Colorado and others. For example, with regard to edibles, which is has been a real concern also in Colorado.
To bring that up.
Yeah, they're having problems there where these packages are very easy to open. They're not resealable, and that's why this measure includes protections to make sure that all packages are clearly marked, that they can't be marketed or attractive to children in any way, and that they're resealable. So. With regards to the opposition, you're going to hear a lot of scaremongering and fear-mongering from them, but we can absolutely say that this measure contains the strongest protections for children, far and above compared to any other measure, the similar measure.
So like a child-proof cap or something?
Absolutely, no. That's something. Child-proof packaging is going to be critical. In addition to regulating the dosage for edibles, so that's included in this measure because it's important to know that this is about recreational marijuana use for adults over the age of 21. It's going to; those are the only people who could buy it. Right now, it's actually easier for minors to buy marijuana than it is for them to get their hands on alcohol.
Definitely.
And the reason for that is because dealers don't card. They're not checking to see if you're 21 when you're purchasing this. So that clearly needs to change, and that will change as a result of this measure. When this measure passes, marijuana purchases will be restricted to adults over the age of 21, just like alcohol sales.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about how this projected $1 billion revenue is going to help the California tax coffers?
Yes, absolutely. Well, a good portion of the revenue is dedicated to making sure that the measure is being implemented so that it'll pay for itself. And then after that, we project that we could be dedicating up to 125 million a year once it's fully implemented.
Wow.
For law enforcement, more than 350 million a year for substance abuse and prevention programs as well. These are programs that there is a pre-existing need for that we have identified, including tobacco, alcohol, and drug abuse. And there's also going to be $125 million for environmental cleanup. A lot of these grow sites currently for marijuana are not regulated because it's in the shadows. So this measure will increase regulation, and that includes environmental protections. There's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen. Yes, and this measure will dedicate funds for environmental cleanup as well.
And so will there be a task force or some kind of organization that's going to oversee all this?
Well, the measure is pretty clear in terms of how the revenue is going to be used and distributed. And one thing I want to be clear is that, this isn't going to, if this passes, when this passes, it's not going to change overnight, okay? So we're right now in September of 2016. This measure would go into effect January 1st of 2017. So there's time built in for law enforcement, for other regulatory bodies to begin to take this into account and prepare for the eventual change in the law.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Tenoch, for joining us. Take a look at our Facebook page and write a comment. You can also send us an email at tips@newsupnow.com. We'll see you next time on California Up Now. Thanks for joining us.